Alright, so here we have our QNAP NAS, our network attached storage device, and this one, this will be one of the first time I'm fooling around with a NAS that does RAID 1 in particular I wanted. And what we mean is that it will be able to write and duplicate data or mirror data to both drives. And so I'm going to install the hard drives, get this plugged into the network, and then show you guys the configuration that I'm going to do for this particular QNAP NAS or network attached storage. For people who don't know what a NAS is, it is essentially a storage device that is found on your network. Behind it, you notice we have our gigabit Ethernet connection, and then your USB 3.0 connectors. So again, for this particular one, I went with this. It came without a disk, and so I'll have to install in the hard drives, and I'll be putting in two 4 terabyte Seagate Barracuda hard drives into this, which will serve as a mirror to each other to ensure that we don't lose data if one of the hard drive crashes, right? So my hard drive, of course, goes into this bay. In that format, and seems to just clamp right in. I don't see any. Oh, alright, it has some screws that needs to go at the bottom of the drive to hold it in the bay itself, and then this plugs into the enclosure. Easy as that, it's snap rated, no problem. Let's get this connected up to the network. It's heavy. Alright, so I am plugged into my network. So we want to see if we can search for our device on the network. So I'm hoping it's getting an IP address via DHCP or something assigned dynamically to it. And let's see if we can download the tool that can be used to scan for it on our network. Alright, so I did a search for QNAP Discovery Tool. We click on the first one, which is the QNAP utility, and we're choosing the essential, and it should download your QNAP Finder, which you'll use to essentially help you to find your QNAP on your network after you have that Ethernet card plugged in, right? So you have a wire plugged in to your switch on your network, and this tool should allow you to scan your local area network and find your QNAP NAS for us to configure it. Yeah. So we'll just install all the different attributes that comes with it. Share Anonymous, Launch Pro, that's okay. So I'll have it launch the Pro afterwards so we can find our device. Now, for the most part, for people who have played around with network attached storage before, it wouldn't be as common to find network attached storage with two hard drive bays, especially here in Belize, right? Let me make sure that I highlight that, especially here in Belize. But now it is available, and the purpose of having it with more than one hard drive is so that you can mirror your data. You can have data copy across from one hard drive to the other, so that you can save yourself the headache of having lost data, right? So you're making sure that you're putting different things in place so that you don't lose data. So let me see if I can locate this program, because it says, there we go. So right click here, open QNAP Finder, allow on this network. Region, I leave it as global, and there we go. It's scanned already. It picked up my QNAP device. It's 192.168.104. So the 104 then tells it that that is my address on the network. So server not yet initialized. You want to go through the process. So it pops this up. So get ready for that. So we'll say yes, so we can do the smart install, right? So notice the address it took you direct to the QNAP device now at 104, and well, it's using that browser, that's okay. The model I'm using is the TS231P, and it says click to start and download the latest firmware automatically. So because I just have it up and running, I do want the latest firmware from the company, so I'll say start, and so it's checking to see if we can get the latest firmware. So these are normally one of the first things you want to do. You want to make sure that you have the updated firmware on your devices. So I'll have this download and I'll skip through it once it's downloaded so you guys can see the configuration itself with me. And just bear with me. This is my first installation of the QNAP network attached storage. Alright, so it took a while. The NAS has restarted and it should be lagging in back at this time. So we should have the latest firmware installed, 4.3.6.0.95. So I'll say skip because I did that already. Let's do the smart installation guide. Give our NAS a name. So let's call this, let's give it a name like network storage. Admin, that's fine. Let's give it a password. Next. These are, let's leave it to synchronize with the internet time server automatically. That should be fine. Says, do you want to use DHCP in terms of dynamic IP address, or do you want to use a static? In terms of this, when it comes to NAS devices, I prefer that it's static, so I know what the address will be, right? So it brings two Ethernet cards. Number one is connected and number two is disconnected. For number one, it says 104. In this case, I will leave it as 104 because I will still have to change it whenever I go over to the client's place, because this is not for my particular area, right? So ideally, I will want to change this even before I jump over to the client's place. But I'm using this one just for the demo to show you guys how to configure the NAS. So I'll have it as static, leave it as the same 104. And everything else looks okay. DNS server 8.8.8.8, that's fine. So next, IP address does not change, that's fine. So we'll proceed. I'm using the same thing. Cross platform. If you're 100% sure that your network comes only with Windows, then you can select Windows. If you know that people or persons on your network may have different type of devices, then you can select it for different type of devices. So whether you're using some sort of phone, you're using an Apple device, or you're using a Windows device, this should be okay to allow for cross platform. So I'll select all three. So we have that flexibility. And then next, and this just gives us a summary. Your network storage, the name, your date and time location, blah blah blah, and different services available. So apply. I'll just have this not store my password for it now. Again, because I'm configuring this for somebody else, right? So here it goes. It's configuring, applying the settings. We'll have to log in again. Let me make sure I write down my password somewhere that I can remember that, because that password might remain. Good. So this should be saving right now all the settings that we did just now, including the IP address and the username for logging in. And as soon as we get into the settings for it, that is when we get a chance to set up our RAID devices, or set up our disk, get those disks ready for storage. So as you can see, everything just takes a little while with this device. from some of the reading that I've done, I know that because we're using a 4 terabyte drive, so it's a total of 8 terabyte, but it's 4 terabyte mirrored. But because we'll be using that, it will take I think a couple hours just to kind of get the drives up and ready, right? Alright, so we head over to the NAS management. It's asking for my login. It was admin we had in there, and we put in our password. Never. There are some agreement you have to data policy notice. You can read through that and continue. So skip through those for this purpose. Alright, then we are at our management where we want it to be. So we have our control panel, our storage and snapshots, our SSD profiling, if we're using an SSD, and visualization. So let's go to our control panel and we'll do storage and snapshot. Alright, so it's saying update is available also. So we can add update. Oh, it's giving me a tour for some reason. Okay. So 4.5.3 1697. So have it remind me next time I log in to update. Just for now, so we can go through it, right? Alright. So that's a snapshot. This connection agreement, that's alright. Alright, so we're at storage and the snapshots. Storage and snapshots, right? And it shows us that we have two disks, this one and this two installed, and they are free, right? So I went through and I probably prepared them. So one of the first things we need to do, because we want to set this up as a RAID. We want to set this up as a RAID 1 device, or configure RAID on it. It means that we have to go ahead now and configure the drive and have it create and get ready to mirror from one drive to the other. To get that done, then we have to configure our storage, right? So one of the first things then is that we need a storage pool. So let's go ahead and create a storage pool. So next, alright, this is the various units and shows the status of both drives, and you notice it's 3.64 or 4 terabytes per drive. So we're going to select both drives that we'll use, and we get to select our RAID. So there's different types. If you're using single, it means that there's no RAID and there's a combination of both drives, so we'll end up with 8 terabytes of space. If we're using the GBOD, I'm not too familiar with that one. Then there is the RAID 0, and RAID 0 allows that you use the disk capacity to be used, not providing kind of this failure, right? So we'll be writing again to both. RAID 1 is what we want, and RAID 1 allows us to protect against the disk failure, and this should be used when you're using two disks. And so we'll have a mirroring effect where one disk is you're writing data to both. So if one disk fails, you still have your data there. If we had more than 3 disks in place, we could do RAID 5, and RAID 5, if I'm correct, does some sort of parity, and parity is an error correction bit. So it does parity on one drive and then copies to the others. So it means then that if there is a failure, that the hard drives are able to rebuild data to the other drive, and so you can quickly swap that out and put in a drive and have it rebuild data. RAID 6 is kind of similar, and RAID 10, or I like to call it RAID 10 instead of RAID 10, is just a combination of RAID 1 and RAID 0 to allow for maximum protection in terms of data right, or having data failed. So we're using two drives at 3.64 terabytes or 4 terabytes each, and we're configuring it to RAID 1. So choose RAID 1, then next. Alert threshold tells you that if you're reaching capacity, I will leave this as default. If you're reaching capacity of, let's say, 80%, it will send you an alert to say, all right, your disk is reaching capacity and what you need to do in terms of maybe taking out data. So we leave it as 80%, that's fine. I mean, 4 terabyte for a small organization is okay. So our storage pool would have been created. It's going to do some provisioning after this. Unallocated, we have 97%, and we're just going to have it use everything, right? Good. So create. All these will be erased. Yeah, that's okay. My drives, I have them. I'm ready to use those drives for storage. And again, I'm using some Seagate drive. For as far as my reading goes, they're some of the better hard drives for use in network attached storage device. So we're creating our RAID device. That's key for the starting process of this. And then after this, we get a chance to look at creating users and creating folders for sharing. Alright, so we're back. So storage pool was created. So it creates a new volume to begin storing data. So we'll need to create a new volume in order for us to begin to store data, and we need to allocate space and volume to our LUNs and ensure that the reserve free space and expansion can continue for system operation. So next step is to create a new volume within that array that we created, right? So we'll say new volume, and it's guiding us along the way, if you notice. So space allocation, we'll use, it says free space is 3.5 terabytes. Should allow us to use the entire thing. So the entire storage pool we'll use. Let me go back. Yeah. So the entire storage pool we'll use as a tick volume, and everything else I just leave as default. So next. Here is our volume capacity. So because we have now to the computer to look as 4 terabyte, it means then that we can then determine different volumes. And so let's say we wanted to store, if I just wanted to do, let's say a Plex server, a video server, I can have a volume for that. If I just want to use a storage data a volume for data storage, I can have a volume for that. If I want to use a volume for particularly camera data, I can have a volume for that. In our case, they're only going to store data throughout the organization, and we'll do that in the simplest of form by just creating folders and having the users have certain privileges to different folders. So my volume name, I'll call it data volume 1, and my capacity, we are going for, actually we could go all the way up here, right? So we could go 3.5. Let's do 3 point something terabytes, right? So 3.5. 3.50. Good. So we'll use the entire thing as a volume. We're just pushing in data into it. By default, again, this has to do with file system formatting. I leave those as default, and we're okay. So next, so data volume 1 is 3.5 terabytes, additional spacing for whatever else the system might need, and then finish. No type of file encryption, that's okay, we're okay with that. So volume data 1 volume is being created. When it is ready, you can start to store data by creating folders. So we're going to have to wait until this is ready. And the drive is making noise, so close. And the noise is probably because it's initializing, and so it's going through the initializing state for the drives. So we'll wait on that, it's at 11% already. It's giving me a warning also in terms of synchronization, and we'll have that run and see what happens when it completes, when it is complete. Good, so like I mentioned before, it's going to take a while. It's initializing the drives. There's a little log file up here that says what's running in the background. Notice it's synchronizing, it's initializing. It says 302 hours. It's 4 terabytes. It shouldn't take that long. So that's going to drop real quickly as soon as it finishes the synchronization. If I was using, let's say, a 12 terabyte hard drive, then it would take even longer. So I suspect it'll take about 2 hours. So we can go and check it out. It's doing this one, it's testing it, make sure it's good. Every other, the current speed 6 gigabits per second. You can go back to Snapchat, Snapshot, sorry. It's synchronizing, and it's doing its thing again. This time should go down. It's at 973 hours now. I suspect again that will go down in a few. But the next step again, next step in line is to go ahead and create folders and users and assign them to the different folders that we'll be sharing. Alright, so I'm going to stop there for this video, so it's not a long video. Next video will look specifically at creating folders and creating users and giving them privileges for the shared network. So see you in the next video.